That last little, to the shoot, did you know about that? Did you know about that little incline?
I've heard about it. That was
Just one last little, I got you.
yeah, it's like going to slap you in the face, right?
Gordon's fire department. I know, I got two. Okay, I just come back here. I just come back here. You two can do this with me. Yeah. Yes, I'm leaving. You're leaving? You can cook my throat for the count. Oh. What?
Everybody's normal. Don't do that to us. Yep. Sit down.
Attention, Kmart shoppers.
I couldn't see people right there.
Try to leave it, scratching paper.
Yeah. I felt, mentally, I thought, man, my hip started hurting about 14, and I was dragging it the rest of the school.
Come here. Is that a yes or no?
Well, did that get sit down?
Yeah, gun time, gun time.
All right, good morning. It is 10:01. We'll call this meeting Wichita County Commissioners Court to order. Everyone please rise. This time I'd like to call on Commissioner Barry Muller.
Pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today facing a world in turmoil. And we know that you are the one that can calm the seas, calm the waters, and bring things back into perspective for all mankind. And we'd ask for your blessings in that direction. Lord, we also realize that as a people, you gave us the ability to think, to reason, to take action. And we'd like to take this opportunity to really better appreciate the freedoms that we have in this country and the things that we all know are worth preserving so that we can have the opportunity to praise you and to worship you and to move our country in the right direction. Lord, we'd ask that you would watch over our county family. We'd ask that you would watch over our first responders that rush into danger when the rest of us are shying away. Lord, we would ask a special blessing on all of our military families as they certainly see the immediate future very uncertain right now, and lay your hand on their shoulder and reassure them. Lord, most of all, we thank you for the ability to have everlasting life that you brought forward by sacrificing your beloved Son on the cross. Lord, we ask all these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Join me in pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Take seats, please. Okay, I'd ask that we have, at this time, it is 10:03, and anyone in the audience here or on the phone would like to make any public comments at this time. Yes, sir, Mr. Hatcher.
Judge, I just want to, I've spent a lot of time up here over the last several months. I've really enjoyed getting to know more about what goes on up here. And I hope I have a reason to be here at the next meeting, really. But I just want to tell you all, I appreciate what all y'all do, and I think you're doing a good job. And hope I get to come back now.
All right.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
I'd like to say one thing.
Yes, sir. You can.
I think it might be known that there is an election tomorrow, but I just want to put it out there that if y'all have friends, y'all have people that know that haven't voted, please share with them that they need to get out and vote. This is well, at least for me, it's a pretty important election, and I think for Mr. Hatcher. So if you have people that you know haven't voted, that they're like-minded, that you have beliefs that you believe in, help people understand what they're voting for and who they're voting for, and get out and vote.
Hopefully it'll be a little warmer than we're used to on the last Saturday. And if you have your old ticket, it will be honored. If you don't have your old ticket, this is a donation, and so you'll need it just within that. Okay, thank you. This time I'd ask you to hold that on the consent agenda and if you remove it, if you request it on the consent agenda, item number 20, the city has an additional cost that we have to put on that list. The bill.
The $25,000 posted, we are supposed to print this to we didn't know what
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Just for the record, that was the motion, I think the same thing. Item number 1 on general business is to review and approve the regular bill payment, Board County Treasurer, District payroll and bill payment within 32 hours of the U.S. mail, FedEx, UPS, or electronic and regulated otherwise, or may be picked up and reflected in the treasurer's office. Anyone in the audience or on the conference line who have any questions or comments being made on the bills that are paid? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Can I pause real quick?
Yes.
Can we get this to, we're looking for this information.
Has that been distributed? They're waiting.
Okay. Well, never seen this before. That should have happened Friday.
I mean, if we need to take a break, we
We
need to
didn't
make
have
sure
it
they
till
got
right now, this is the first time we do it.
Okay. That's good then. I'm sorry. Yeah, I had a clarification on something that this is not on the constable transfer section. It indicates the fund, we're not really impressed with what here, but I know this they do have the equipment, they're just paying right, but our policy calls. But our policy calls for them, the sheriff's office, to purchase ammunition, any, common specialty items. Right. So there's 16, and motion
And second for the consent.
Nikki and Mark.
Yeah. They also. Okay, item number 2 is discuss, consider, and take action to approve quote from Red Tide Communications, the compromise it is $400 more than lowest bid. He'll explain this. The 3 submitted and in the amount of $35,615.99 to replace security cameras and associated hardware for emergency management office is budgeted in 2022 EMR budget, with $35,000 to be paid from 406 and 615. Sorry, 615, not 4. 615.99 from the general fund contingency. Going.
Sir, good morning. Again, about 17 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, when we moved into that building, we had a lot of trouble with the cameras.
The difference in the bids and the lowest, explain why.
Yeah,
this building that was removed, that's all good, new serviceable equipment. There's no one from IT here to ask if that's viable to use the location. So it's still good.
And they pull back to the back of the camera. Until
Sitting there that, where we can, as opposed to buying
Item number 3, discuss and consider take action to approve quote in the amount of $21,864 for mobile phone purchase to install alarms on the communication systems and public safety radio equipment associated with the plan and contract. Maintenance personnel will be automatically notified whether there is a site equipment failure to be paid from the Department 406 budget, with lines to be determined by the county auditor. Mr. McGowan?
I guess that would be 4-9 as well. This is to alarm all the remote sites so that we know when the doors are opening, when the power's off, when the generator's running, when the equipment's off, when the batteries go low. Instead of the power going off, the generator starting, not stopping, running yourself to death, we'll know that they're running. And it's also part of the security system as well. This will also give us the ability to log into the system remotely. So if there's a problem, instead of driving to all the sites to see where the problem is, we'll be able to log in remotely and see where the problem is and go directly to that site, which will save a lot of time. So if one site is down, we'll be able to see that remotely.
how many sites? This is an annual expenditure of 21,000, one time
It's a $10 monthly charge for the monitoring.
for the monitoring. This is just for the equipment to do that, and all the generators at all is all compatible with this.
Well, the generators are, the residential type generators. There's nobody around here that really services those as a whole. So we're going to put the contactor on the changeover. And what it's doing, we'll see the contact. We'll see the changeover switch. So
Okay.
if that's made contact, then we know the thing's still running.
I think the generator that we put in Electra had that capability to report back, if I'm not mistaken. We're not using that. Yeah, the tower site
Yeah, but nobody around here has the software.
has the software.
Just nobody does that because of the type of generators they are. They're small and they're residential type. we'll do some of the stuff that we need to do.
Lee is
We'll
working,
monitor that though.
Lee is working with, Jeff Ward, that we've used a number of times for grant consulting, trying to, get a grant to upgrade our generators, bring them up to commercial standards, so we'll, if we have an elongated period of, power loss, then we will be able to sustain that operation.
Sure.
And this one did come in a little under, it was 22 is what it costed.
Under is a good term.
Not used enough.
Yeah, well, underfunded is useful.
Yeah.
But, you know, I hate to get quotes and then blow them up, you know, when it's a big budget. It's try to get close, but with the inflation like this, it's just ridiculous.
Yep.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve that
I'll
as
second.
stands.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Finley. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 4 is discuss, consider take action to continue or cancel the burn ban in effect since December 14th, 2021. Okay. I've just had some requests, people asking, maybe the Boy Scouts want to know if they can go camping in Camp Perkins and have, fires, that kind of thing.
I was asked that question moments ago
Oh.
about that.
We've had moisture, but not,
We're out of danger already. I mean, we've got a lot of fuel out there and we're just still burning dry.
Only places that are out of danger are the ones that have already burned.
yeah, and moving into March are historically,
The rest of it is still there, the fuel load is still there, we've not had considerable moisture, we've had a little spattering of snow, which didn't amount to anything.
well, we're moving into our historic high wind month. I mean,
That's the
it's gonna be at least 15 miles an hour every day
The
and more.
biggest outbreak of fires we've had this year have been from electrical lines.
Fire lines.
And we're going into the season where that's gonna be hazardous, and is there something we can do on an individual basis to help out in projects like the Scouts? But I don't know that it's time to pull it for another 30 days.
Well, the county judge has the authority to cancel it on his own, but that's why it's on here. Well, Sheriff.
Is there any way to allow the Perkins to be able to have their weekend
A waiver type deal?
waiver, something like that? Because those of us who are involved in scouting and Perkins, we know that there's plenty of personnel on scene that people are adults that watch for that. And
That's not gonna be the problem.
Right, but I can't remember a time we ever had a fire out there doing a bunch of Boy Scouts acting like a bunch of gators.
Well, they also hold the fire academy out there and do the wildland burn off and everything, so they should be in a little bit better condition than most places, so.
And we did went down south, going up at the Red River and stop anyway.
You're gonna have one, that's not a bad place to have.
We've seen it happen before, Westerburg. But we are getting, we have had a few calls of people bargaining illegal, maybe just stupid things. I don't think we've owed anybody a ticket, have we? I think there's been some, language that was given to somebody, they understood what would happen next time. But it wasn't nothing got out of hand either.
Mr. Pagan.
I didn't bring the burn ban exceptions with me, but typically fires for ceremony is what they call it, is allowed through burn ban state. I don't think that was in it.
I don't like that sentence.
Typically ceremonial fires are allowed, and that's how Boy Scouts have used their fires in the past.
Yeah, but Friday night, big party with a bunch of beer cages and get our ass.
We used to have a lot of fraternal ceremonies at wood season, sand pit parties, so I think we got to be careful.
I got a pile of my place that they do ceremony to this beer, but
Well, ag burns are still allowed. People are clearing land, it's for agriculture.
clearing land, it's all pretty tall grass we cut last year.
Typically, the agriculture burning is intended to burn off crop stubble.
Yeah.
Wheat stubble in preparation for planting, and people come to the piles and want to burn those, and, tell them that's not intended.
Which in and of itself is a terrible thing to do. But anyway, that's just.
Yeah, but, if they are clearing land, if you're clearing land and you have mesquite that you want to burn off,
We prefer you didn't, but theoretically,
From a
that's,
conservation standpoint, don't do that.
yeah, it's not as conservative as you thought.
Yeah.
No.
Judge, I'd love to see the scouts be able to participate. If there's some way we could write an exemption for them, I just don't know that it's wise to do that for another 30 days at least.
I would far prefer, because once somebody says, well, they must have taken the burn ban off, and then we put our law enforcement people on in a rather awkward situation of trying to sort them out.
We get a lot of calls, they're burn man or not, I can't keep all these.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what would be prudent would probably be to leave it on until we get a bunch of rain, everything gets greened up, and then drop it and let people burn in trash cans and piles and all that stuff. And as soon as it starts to dry out here, put it back on.
We're gonna see our green up in the next probably 30 days. We've not seen it yet though, and that it's serious.
To me, we haven't had enough moisture coupled with
We've not changed this.
the beat going into March with the higher winds. I don't think we should at this point.
And I think a lot about these fire departments. Those guys are strapped, and they've had a tough winter, and man, anything we can do to help.
Do I have a motion then to keep the burn ban in place?
So,
I hate to satisfy
I'll
the
second.
Boy Scout operation, because it is important, but
yeah.
Okay, is there a
We
second?
took that,
Yes.
I think we took that ceremonial fires off of that deal that the state allows, because just like what y'all was saying, 12 guys and a keg of beer, and it's not ceremonial fire.
No, but the sheriff can definitely define those as he encounters them. I would think that, whether it's fire girls or Boy Scouts or anything that they typically, train for fire safety to begin with.
Mr. Beecham, would you second?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way to amend our deal to put that back in there?
I'd rather we not do that on the fly. We
All right.
put some thought in it and put it together, work with legal counsel. But I'm just telling you, I think we're better off to make it as clean and clear as we can. Okay. Any other comments?
Just a side note on the electrifiers. A lot of people don't realize those are two separate fires.
Yes.
People that have not, the one fire that burned the house, and they come to the neighborhood, that was some power lines, and since we found out there was some litigation going on, the call for what caused that, that property damage. But the other was on that one branch at, same thing, power lines. The people don't realize that on the oil field, areas, those power lines, they're not regulated like they're on the highways and downtown and in our neighborhoods. It's a totally different ballgame out there. We all know how it's set up. Sometimes they lay on the ground. And sometimes it's probably safer because they're not bouncing around for wind blowing. Get on them poles, they fall apart and lack of maintenance to them, that's what sets most of those fires.
Yeah. Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Watts, a second by Commissioner Beecham to continue the burn ban. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Is that the scatters that sent you that?
Mm-hmm.
You know the answer? Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 5 is receive an update on courthouse renovation, elevator projects, and the county courthouse annex. Commissioner Beecham.
Well, due to the ice conditions last week, we didn't get as much as we'd hoped, but did have a good walk Monday with the engineer on this building. My concerns were the slab on the first floor, with it being uneven and cracked. If we had unnecessary undue settling to the building, engineer on his initial assessment felt like that a lot of the slanting in the slab is because it was intentionally poured that way, because we're not seeing any cracking or settling in the columns affecting the second and third floor. So he's writing us a report. Just from his initial assessment, he doesn't believe that we have structural defects, so we can move
Mark,
forward.
on that, the judge asked a question while we were in MTO last week concerning that bridge polymer that they're putting over just as a upgrade to material that goes over a bridge with motion and movement. And then Mickey and I encountered one of those on our way to College Station, and I mean, it would give you a headache in a second. But it was that polymer stuff that can handle some movement and motion and everything. And I just wondered, is that an option for us to make, or are you saying that we won't have to level the floor?
We're going to have to level the floor. It's just we don't have structural defects. That was the concern with some of the cracking and spalling that we were seeing. Once we get everything cleared out, that we had some structural issues, and I wanted to get another engineer's opinion before we move forward, before we cover it all up and let the chips fall where they may. But he's given us some direction and guidance on how to resolve the cracking and move forward and be for certain that we don't have issues. So
That's an interesting idea.
Well, I just thought if it's going to experience some movement, that it might hold up long better.
But this moving, we didn't have the movement that we kind of thought by the way that looked. So I don't know if you really have
I don't.
that kind of movement.
I said that from his assessment, he doesn't believe we have the slab's not moving like it appears, because he said it looks to him as if it was poured intentionally unlevel, because where he's seeing the cracking would not indicate that the floor is cracking because of movement, or it's not sinking because of movement. There's nothing to show that the building above it is smoothed in any way. There's no cracking or spalling above. So
We just couldn't figure out, when Commissioner and I talked about this Friday, if you made it that it's sloping the drain, where's the drain?
yeah, there's no drain. There's no drain.
The only thing that I'm aware of was the steps going to Dave's old office were out of kilter to me. There's a hump in them or
The bottom side,
yeah.
that's from all those years with the leakages that's come through there.
There's
You won't get hit by that stuff falling off anymore, they fixed it.
that floor is all kinds of not level. You didn't notice it when the walls were there, but once the walls come out, you see.
10 years ago, it wasn't like that, hardly, it did a little bit to it.
Well,
My little office had down there, you can put a golf ball on one side of the corner and roll it upside.
well, your office has like a mud floor poured over it, and and we can't figure that one out either. But it was, the good thing is the engineer had really no concerns for structural integrity of the building. So I'm glad we took the step, and the money well spent to have a little peace of mind moving forward. Other things we've encountered, with the door coming out of the new elevator lobby on the back side going into the new first floor. We had to move the door slightly because of columns that were within the wall that we didn't realize. We've also found plumbing. It's really neat how when they joined the buildings together in the 80s construction, instead of building a utility chase, they made the dead space between the two buildings the utility chase, and didn't document that on the plans. So when we cut the door for the new elevator exit, all the water and sewer lines were ran in that cavity. So that all has to be relocated, rerouted. You never know what you're going to find, but they've got all the asbestos abatement over the tile done on 3 over the previous weekend. There has been some concern from some of our staff that the asbestos is dangerous. when the asbestos remediation is being done, it's being done in full containment. The smell that you smell is from the solvents that they use to get the mastic up off the floor. The air quality is being monitored at all times. It's one of the reasons we're doing it at night, so the building's empty. So there's no issues, no concerns. State inspectors have been here checking it. There's no hazard from asbestos to our staff. So it is neat when you go up on the stairway landings to see the old original herringbone white tile. I was shocked to see that from the original spiral staircase. But it's neat what you uncover in this old building when you start tearing it apart. But looks like we may get some slab poured at the annex this week. They have the steel in place. I need to visit with the architects, which I haven't had a chance to do this morning. I did get a quote for the roof drains that I thought was way excessive, and I denied that quote. And I don't know what the solution is. It looks like they're getting ready to pour, so they can't pour until that's done. But I said no on the quote, how to address that.
Did they go under the sidewalk, come out in the curb?
Yeah.
Is that customary?
Yeah, that's where they were before. But the amount of the quote that I received to address that was way excessive. So, but being gone all last week, and I haven't had a chance to figure out see what was decided, or I haven't had any emails on to the fact either. So I'll be checking with that after this meeting. That's really all I have.
Next time we have, let's move in. I saw Mr. Altman arrive. We'll drop down and go into the closed session item, unless someone has some particular question about conference. This is something new to put on, but commissioners all attended, and talking to them over a couple of different things. It sounded like we had some really good classes presented that would be good to share, at least among the court members, do it in this fashion and do that. But in deference to Mr. Altman being here, unless there's one of the members doesn't want to do that, we're going to move into the closed session. And I'll be asking you all to clear the courtroom other than those involved for the briefing discussion with Wichita County District's Office and Brad Altman of Altman Legal Group, in order for the commissioners to receive legal advice from the attorneys regarding pending and threatened litigation, settlement offers, claims, and other matters for which the attorney's duties to their client under the Texas state bar
Support the adoption and approval of the Texas TIVA agreed judgment in its entirety, and support the adoption and approval of the Texas distributor settlement in its entirety, and authorize the county to execute the Texas release for the Texas Indo settlement, and authorize the county to execute the Texas release for the Texas TIVA settlement to be held by counsel in escrow until the effective date of the settlement, and authorize the county to execute the Texas release for the distributor settlement to be held by counsel in escrow until the effective date of the settlement. And also as follows: there is a substantial need for repayment of past opioid-related expenditures and payment to help abate current and future opioid-related harms in and about Wichita County. And the County Commissioners Court supports in its entirety the Texas Indo settlement and the proposed Texas TIVA agreed judgment and the proposed Texas distributor settlement. The County Commissioners Court understands that the purpose of each settlement is to
effectuate resolution of the opioid litigation against the endo defendants, the TIPA defendants, and the distributor defendants. We also understand that an additional purpose is to ensure the effective means of distributing any potential settlement funds obtained under settlements in Texas and under the jurisdiction of Texas courts in a manner and means that would promote an effective and meaningful use of the funds in abating the opioid epidemic in this county and throughout Texas. That would be my motion, Judge.
Second. That was a mouthful. Yeah, second.
Okay.
But you have to restate it, Chris.
Yeah, by memory. I state your name.
Okay. All right. There's a motion made by Commissioner Watts, a second made by Commissioner Beecham. Is there anyone who has any questions or make any clarification on that? Hearing none, I will call for the vote then. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we'll go back to item number 6, which is discuss any notable subjects from the VG Young conference. You all have a list of the conference subjects that were presented on under GB6.
Yes, we had an extremely good ARPA meeting that lasted 4 hours, and I'll ask Tracy this. I posed it to Tanya, Tracy, on Friday. But in our class, the presenter, which was the NACO individual that was at our pertinent in the development of these monies, posed to us that we could not make any extraordinary pension fund payments.
But ordinary.
Towards the retirement.
Okay, wait a second, was it extraordinary or ordinary?
No, extraordinary.
No,
No, we can make ordinary
extraordinary.
payments, but not extraordinary.
Nothing
No, I'm
said
sorry.
that we could make ordinary. They just said we couldn't make extraordinary.
Which, for example, we historically pay the liability percentage calculated by TAC, which is today 13% or 13.9%.
That's really good.
Additional would be like making a 2 or 3% on top of that to buy down our liability. I wanted to make certain it was okay to make an ordinary payment, if possible, towards that. For example, paying the retirement, if nothing else, on the individuals that we have paid their emergency monies towards. Just to soften the blow, I guess, as to the full retirement. And we didn't get, Tracy was pressed for time, and there were thousands of questions, and we did ask some, but we didn't get there with him, and I would still have posed it to you, whatever he told me, because of just their uncertainty. But in my mind, that we could possibly make, the way it was stated, ordinary payments. And it would be a benefit, at least it'd help us some.
So,
from what our normal costs.
Really what we're talking about, that came up in their ARPA class, was making ordinary payments on your retirement plan. Now, Jeff, are you saying that they pay down, actually, let's say the 14% that we put in this year, we would pay that with ARPA money?
Well, I'm under that impression.
That we
He
could.
left us with that impression that we could pay the 14 ordinary liability owed, but we couldn't pay an exorbitant amount over and like.
Well, and they only assess us, we're paying 12.1.
13.9.
13.9, 12.1 last year, 13.9, because they're making less money this year. So, we could pay all or part of that is the difference. Now, to me, one of the advantages of doing that might be that you could take that and pay that down. Let's say that was $2 million. We would pay that down, and then we would have that money left in general fund to put somewhere else, that
Well,
we wouldn't have to deal with restrictions like in the.
well, that could offset some salary increases or whatever.
There is, if I understood the discussion right, we do have the opportunity to, and this may not be the right term, to prepay retirement or like I see it like a funds held account. You can't ever draw it back out, but it would be there, so if next year your budget was stressed, you might pay half of your commitment for.
That's what I understood it too.
Now, the question, is that ordinary or is that extraordinary? And I don't know.
Well, I think as long as you pay the
Same amount.
the billed amount,
Yeah.
I don't think you'd say, see, because of our earnings, we're not paying the full 14%. So you couldn't say, I'm gonna pay a hit, but you could pay the 13 plus and do that, and then you would have that other money to do something else with.
Or I assume you could use the other money to pay ahead.
Oh, you could use unencumbered money to
Yeah.
pay that, I mean, not
I was just curious
unencumbered,
because that was
lost income monies.
And what perked my interest in that is that when we look ahead at where we are today with this raging inflation that we've got going on and what looks to me like some really tough budget times in this next budget cycle. Boy, if there was an opportunity when you had that opportunity to pay a little of that forward, it might really be beneficial to you down the road when revenue was tight and you wanted to maintain that benefit for the employees, which I think is huge. In my mind, that's one of the last things you want to tamper with, because I think it is a tremendous benefit. But that would that would give you some peace of mind knowing you had that laying out there to draw on if you got into a tough cycle. But I don't know, once again, I don't know if that's ordinary.
You'd have to take that money, put it over here and save it, because you're gonna pay it every year. It's not like you're gonna pay it and not have to worry about it for a couple of years. That's like.
Oh, no, I understood that you could use that to offset that future payment. Let's just say you owed $2 million was going to be your contribution, and you had $1 million in that fund that you could send the other $1 million, use that, and you'd be square. I may be right, maybe I misunderstood it. I thought that's what that was about.
You can pay down your actuarially determined future liability.
Right.
You can pay that down.
Okay.
Which would reduce your
Overall
annually determined contribution rate.
Right. I don't know, it was just interesting. One of the interesting things that I heard too, and it goes right back to this discussion, but it also involves other things, and I'll see if you guys heard the same thing. The NACO representatives was talking about the ARPA money in general and the negotiations to get it done, and he made mention of the fact that when this discussion started out, that money was all going to the state.
Yeah.
The
nothing
counties
to the
were
counties.
not going to be included, and it was their insistence that got this thing separated out to where, and I thought that's kind of a key point.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we're a member.
Well, you're right, Judge, and that's why I thought about it. And what I think what's really caught my ear over that statement was the other way is generally how it happens, just like we were just talking about this other deal. The state say, oh, we'll take care of that, and it never gets filtered down to the county. But I thought that was very
So
significant.
maybe we ought to pay 10 years of NACO.
Well, I tell you what, to me, that was as good a benefit as they could bring to the
That's
table.
it.
One of the other items, Tracy, that was in a separate session away from ARPA, personnel policy was one of those that I listened to, and they cautioned us or made sure that we had made preparations or the correct actions towards an officer that held a dog. So he's really not off of duty when he's off duty with his dog. And I thought that was odd. I never crossed my mind, and so he just cautioned us about workers'
I think he mentioned an hour and a half, didn't he, or something like
There's,
that?
and I don't know what we're doing here at the county, but I know, I'm sure this county, I would think that we have a policy on hand right now that gives them some compensation for taking care of that dog at home like the city does. This,
I think that there has been, I think that's through the sheriff's office, I don't know if it's part of our personnel policy per se, but I think through the sheriff's office, because there is time allowed for the care.
you almost need a contract with them going into that position saying that we're going to accommodate you this much time, but there'll never be any, you can't put in for any more. But it seems like the city has a deal like that. Before you can take that position, you actually have to sign saying they're giving you this much, but you can't turn around and sue them for more because you want to take care of him better. And you're going to spend 3 hours a day instead of.
There is something, but I don't think it's a sheriff's thing, not in county policy nor
It's
shown in
not a
budget.
county personnel policy, it's a SO policy. is what I-
Well, I think the discussion was about make sure you have something in place because it'll blow up on you if you ever go to an audit.
Yeah.
And,
There was a lot of talk about, and I was surprised because Landon's father-in-law, my oldest son's father-in-law is a commissioner in Ford County, and he told me Saturday night that they have in place a subdivision ordinance because they were worried about certain things coming quickly down their path. But that was a real push at this conference to talk about and discuss and let other people explain their policies. And it was very interesting of how that those discussions went and to the how much they were involved in. Judge Wise County, and you speak of those, they even have public works person, that make sure that those plans are then administered as according to plan after the engineer reviews them. And so they went, of course, that's a lot more, they see that a lot more than what we would right now see, but.
There are some, just Judge, for your knowledge, since you weren't there, the counties that were talking about their subdivision policies, they are making their subdivisions put in a better quality road than their county normally does.
That won't work.
Well, I don't know, I mean, it can not, out of the, maybe not extraordinary, but better than what their normal is, because if the county was building a new road, the county might build a road that is better than a chip seal road if you were going to build a new road.
Judge, that's
Well,
that's the
whatever
wording.
standard you build, whatever standard you're holding them to, you have to hold yourself to that same standard going forward.
But the terminology that I saw was that it was new road. It's not existing road.
Correct.
So
if the county were going to build
if the county wanted to build
a new road, then
You
you
have
could
to
build
live
the
with
new
that
road
standard.
at that same
You have
deal.
to build your new
We don't
road to
build
that
new
standard.
roads.
No, but if you're redoing a road, why would you build it to a lesser standard than what you would expect? It's simply, what's going to hold up longer?
well, Judge, I think the discussion is not about, what kind of base you put in, all that, although that's part of it. I think we're talking about the difference between curbed and guttered and not.
Yeah.
I think that's where the real discussion is, which there is a dramatic difference in, the cost of that. Well, and we're not even equipped to do that on a lot of the roads that we
But if we
build.
build it, if we have them build that,
Yeah.
then you've got to figure out how to maintain it after it goes off its
Yeah,
2-year
sure.
deal and becomes yours. So-
And
You
they
look
are
at-
extending some of those out to longer than 2-year deals also.
And you look at even the city of Wichita Falls, what they have to do. Mark, you could address this a lot better than I can. I'm just talking about what I see. You have to own specialty equipment to keep those drains operating and all that stuff. It's a big deal, big ongoing deal to keep that operating. You don't just build it and walk away and let it operate for the next 20 years. So,
There was talk about, and we just didn't see any calculations on the bonding required for that. I'd like to have seen how they're taking into account that cost and then to what they're requesting that bond amount be to underwrite.
because how do you enforce that long term if you're not bonded?
And they
I mean,
did
how do
say
you do
that too.
that?
They were bonding even
Yeah.
for the roads. If there's a failure in that road, they're going back on their bonds.
Right.
So but they were holding them, and they didn't accept that road. You know, some of them don't ever accept the road. If they build a road in in a subdivision, the county has a rule that they will not accept it. It'll be up to your homeowners association to take care of that road. And some of them that are accepting them like 2 years after the subdivision is complete.
Right.
That way, all the cement trucks and all the everything has been using them roads for however many years it takes them to build it, and then you don't take custody of it till 2 years after, if you want to take it onto a county road.
And we made some notes, Judge, when we talk about that, but there was one that, to me, sounded odd, that we kicked in once any parcels put into, the exemptions were talked about, but any parcel broken into 10 acres or less qualified for that. And I thought it was 5 acres or less, and I didn't know why 10 acres.
I think I said that once, but it is 10.
Okay.
And that's why that guy out on Andy Kenyon, is why there was all over 10 acres.
Okay.
Can you set that number, or is that in?
No, it's
No,
It's statute.
Yeah.
So if it's 10, it's 10, and you
Right.
can't, yeah, okay. Well, it all seems
I'd
easy,
sure like
but
to talk about that soon, so we don't forget some of those things that were pertinent, because we did get an opportunity to hear 2 different, one panel discussion, as well as, what the counties were wanting to accomplish with this push.
I did kind of like the road deal. I liked him saying, we're making them build it better than a chip seal road. They got to have so much base.
Well, but a good chip seal road is going to have 6 to 8 inches of base, and depending on your subgrade, you could need more than that. If you've got a really soft, spongy subgrade, you're going to have to try to, strengthen it at the 10-inch level. So that can vary. But we're going to, I'm just saying, whatever we look at in a subdivision order probably is a minimum specification that we should live by, that we require on those roads.
The overall gist, what I got out of these classes was make that subdivision ordinance a little more, have more teeth in it and more detailed than what, really me and Barry at first were looking at something, maybe let's don't go so far, but everybody that I heard really thinks you should go the extra mile and make it pretty detailed.
Yeah.
the problem is, it always comes back to the same thing, how are you going to enforce it?
That's it.
And they don't.
Yeah.
They set the rules up front,
Yeah,
and either the builder's responsibility to go by the rules. If they don't, then they're the ones liable, not the county.
Well, that's where you get into bonding or into letters of credit or something that's exercisable.
Right.
That you can have some recourse. But it's like there's a thing, and I don't know whether I sent it to you all, about a area in a county that has a road district. And they built by specifications under the subdivision order. But it's a separate little entity. But they've gotten tired of paying the cost of keeping up their roads and everything else, so now they want the county to take it over. Well, the county has newer specs, and so they're saying, we want you to upgrade those roads, and so it's become a political nightmare for the commissioner that's in his precinct.
but when you say that, Mickey, when you talk about, I'm trying to think back to the discussion. Are you talking about strictly the roads and/or other infrastructure? Are you talking about the actual dwellings? Because we're really, from what I read in our deal, we don't deal with specs on what somebody builds.
No.
Ours is about the premises.
The premises.
And the egress, regress,
The floodplain, the drainage,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
they went into quite a bit of, they're saying you need to be pretty detailed dealing with drainage issues, stream issues in that area.
Obviously, yeah.
There's, your setbacks and all that. They were real important about setbacks and all that, because that affects everything down the road. You need to have those set in so there's not people coming in there. You got 500 lots and they're building the setbacks and all different, and different height slabs. You need to have it
uniform.
Yeah, it seemed to be more detailed the better.
One of the things I saw that I think we need to look at, when they're going to develop something, we don't tell them specifications on the house, but let's take Wellington Road, we're all familiar with that. Okay, you've got all the issues dealing with the drainage that are on private land, and some kind of a covenant we ought to have that's in that deed that the owner realizes, and Tracy, we're going to need your help on this if we can do this, but the owner realizes they've got to maintain that ditch coming through their property.
Which has been the discussion we've had in that neighborhood
Yes, sir.
forever, Judge, is we don't have the authority to go on that private property and really work on that.
No, and we don't want an easement that takes us,
No.
Down the stream 3 or 4 miles. That's,
Which one, yeah, that's, boy, it seems like it ought to be simple, but it's not.
no.
It's not simple.
And when you start putting money into it, somebody's got a cost, then you've got a problem.
But, Judge, I remember when working for Pleasant Valley, and there was a question on one of the lots in the subdivision that's just north of Pleasant Valley Country Meadows.
Yeah.
Y'all had approved that plat at some point, and then years down the road, one of the lot owners wanted to put a shop up behind the house, and that was a no-no within the plat, and he had to bring it back to Commissioner's Court. The Commissioner's Court wouldn't give him the amendment or the opportunity to do that. They held the plat plan as the basic, and he never was able to do it.
That was before my time. Really, you remember Country Meadows getting approved?
Oh, you don't remember them being approved as a...
No, I don't remember being brought during my tenure on the court, and really, but somewhere along there, but I don't know how long that's been there, but,
Well, and then you also get held to, we're running into this right now. You've got people that want to hold you to a quite a bit higher standard than what you might maintain a typical county right-of-way. One of the things we run into a lot, if we have to go out and work on drainage, and I warn the homeowner, we're tickled when somebody maintains their property all the way to our road, out through our right-of-way. It's great. We like it. It looks better. They do a better
We'll
job.
stay off of it and not tear it up.
That's right. But then when we go in to try to do a repair, they get upset with us because we're not in the landscaping business. We have to go and do it. We do it to make the water drain, and we run into some static there. Like, well, you left my ditch rough. Well, I can't mow it anymore like I used to. So I could see all kinds of problems in this document. In fact, there was a little of that discussed down there about the standard that you're going to have. If you take that on to repair it in the future, you're going to have some differences of opinion. There's going to be a lot of difference between maintaining that road in that pretty nice subdivision than it would be going down, the typical rural, country road. And that's, I don't know how you differentiate between that, but it sure could cause you some static down the road. Not only how it's built, but how it's maintained. And once again, none of this is easy.
anything come out of a class on federal policy affecting counties?
That was more ARPA stuff. I don't know that I have that one, Judge.
Okay.
That was kind of the first.
Yeah, I think that was more.
Waters of the
That was
U.S. has reared its head again, which could have some effects on what we were just talking about, some of our drainage issues in other areas. That is still, we thought that was put to bed, and it is not. And that's something we're going to have to pay close attention to, because that goes right down to the drain that goes by our sidewalk down here. I mean, that's how overblown that thing.
Every stream, whether it's had water in it 50 years or not.
That's right.
Yes.
So that's still looming out there, and that was mentioned in one of the presentations, that we need to be on top of that. And I know a lot of, certainly in the rural areas, everybody's watching it, because then that gets into access. A lot of that stuff has to have general public access, even on private property. it gets into a really, really tough discussion. And I'm trying to think what else. There was another session that,
Well, best session I went to was indigent health, but that's because I've got some problems
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Now, you went up and talked to him after that?
Yeah, I spent a great deal of time with Miss Ebony, or what's her first name, I don't remember last, but she was
she was
very,
with
Duck County.
Bell County.
Bell County,
Yeah.
okay.
Very intelligent, very articulate on the subject. I had a lot of good pointers. Did get her contact information and have her agree that we could send our new staff down to observe them. And she's a phone call away if we need help as we,
When's your new act?
Starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
well, it's never a bad idea to have staff observe a department that's running well.
yeah.
You know, that sure makes a difference.
That's how we started that 30 years ago. We went down to Brazos County and
Yeah.
especially McLennan County. which had
And you know, with they're right in smack in the middle of that I-35 corridor, and I
Yeah.
can imagine things are changing and growing, and I mean, that's
Yeah. She's,
how they keep up.
What about legislative stuff from Allison Bass?
That was pretty good, and he gave us a sheet, Judge. It was not complete, it was pretty brief. There was nothing that stood out in, to me, great detail. One of the things that did come up, economic development plan, Tracy, that you finished for us a while back, and that's a 2-year plan in that.
It's supposed to be adopted or re-adopted or filed.
Right. That caught my attention, and
Our tax abatement plan.
yeah, and was interesting, I thought. We ran out of question time though. They're just, to me, that's the biggest, where you really learn a lot is when people go to asking different questions that come up with scenarios that you hadn't thought of.
As long as you got someone like Jim Allison.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful of that person that answers that just,
Yeah.
be careful of the source.
Well, we can
On
hope.
Facebook, but not later.
We can hope, I mean, I guess this is what we hope for, that we will be back to maybe a more traditional legislative session this next go-round. I tell you, with the COVID deal and all that was going on, it was hard to, have any kind of a regular feel to it and a regular schedule, because it just made it extremely difficult, and then having to go into all the extra sessions.
And Tracy, you would have enjoyed the younger Judge. What'd you tell me his name? Works with Bob and Jim. McGee. He gave us some litigation instances of just on the wild side, and I'm telling you what now, you just wouldn't envision this happening. But it was very interesting, and he could have used more time, but it was very funny, and it was interesting. You just never think about those things can come up like that.
Not even catching somebody else.
Yeah.
Just
Talk about us and
talking about Commissioners Court Authority, there's a battle going on in the listserv right now over the judge got mad at commissioners over the way they voted something down 4-1. So their mail used to all come to their office, and he put it out in the hallway. Aren't y'all lucky to have me?
Yep.
So, at any rate, that whole thing, I was curious what y'all got out of the Commissioners Court Authority over other elected officials. That must have been a very short.
It was short, and they were pretty specific. No, nothing over anything.
I think it was summed up in one statement.
Yeah.
You don't have any. Yeah. Any questions?
budget,
Yeah.
but not
the
even
good
a
thing
lot of
is-
that.
Yeah.
Because I am pretty sure that I finished all my classes
All
required.
right, well, congratulations.
Yeah, you have to leave them with enough money to function their core
That's right,
functions.
that's
So
right.
that is whatever they determine that to be. So you don't even have that authority.
Right.
Did y'all get anything on rural broadband of?
Yeah, yes,
Kinda slow
yes, we
down.
did.
Slow down is what it said.
Yeah, glad you brought that
Everybody
up.
is saying the same thing, Judge.
Yeah, well, that's what J.D. Clark, the Wise County judge, said, there's federal money coming, don't use your ARPA money for that right
Yeah,
now. So,
Well,
I've
and
got a
there's-
meeting tomorrow with CRCs from, Connect, Texas, that,
a lot of questions in that session
Yeah.
and concerns, in as much as, and I'm having a hard time understanding this. What is the connection going to be between the public and private sector in that? Nobody seems to have that mapped out as to how this is going to move forward. They're wanting public money to make that available to basically everybody.
Yeah.
And
Every
yet,
square inch, but
you know that it's going to have to be a private entity that's going to go and operate that and possibly receive the benefit of it, the
Financial
monetary
benefit,
benefit. And nobody's ever exactly explained to me how we're going to put that together.
the map that they showed,
Yeah.
what disturbed me is we're taking rural broadband out to places in the state that
That don't
don't
make
have
sense.
running water or electricity.
That's right.
And we're gonna give them 100%
they don't have anything to cover.
internet coverage,
Yeah.
and then train them on how to use their devices. With local tax dollars, I don't see it.
Yeah, well, that's the question is, the end user funding, are we gonna supply them the equipment? And then who's gonna pay the upkeep of that? It all sounded great until you got down to reality.
And training on how to use the devices too.
Judge, and this stuff is so quickly disposable. I mean, the technology's racing ahead so much. Is any big investment you're going to make 3 or 4 years down the road, it's all going to be antiquated.
Just look at our 911 district.
I know.
For 5 years, we're upgrading the equipment. They're at millions of dollars of cost.
Getting it done is one thing, but being able to maintain it over a long period of time, I think, is just the major question. And at some point, somebody's got to say, do we really need that? What's our goal?
Well, like the towers that we're looking at, whether to build those in the far west part of the county, to do that, part of what, the idea would be, then we lease space to whoever that provider winds up being, or some cooperative thing on that, and get off that very expensive tower we're on in Electra. At any rate, but there is a whole lot of detail that has not been worked out on that. And I was disappointed in our survey. We wound up getting 23% of the 10-12% we were trying to get of the population of Wichita County.
You only got 23% of 10%?
Yeah.
Well, but the judge,
So you
I
got
did
about
the
3%.
survey, and here was the problem
So
I
you
had
and
with
the
it.
other guy, you and David Graff and only do that.
Well, here's the problem I had with it. I'm trying to think back to it because it was extremely confusing. Because in my situation, it asks you, do you have, and yes, I do. But I also own property where I don't have. Well, what's the answer? What's the correct answer? It was a terrible survey.
Yeah.
It just didn't do a very good job. Very confusing. I could see why somebody would sit down to take it and think, I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I don't think they looked broad enough at the audience. Somebody got a grant to do it. We didn't get the grant, but the grant was provided to provide the company to help us do this. And
I know guys who have formed a co-op out in the rural regions to put up an antenna to run their RTK off of.
it was called cable TV 100 years ago.
Well, no, this is RTK. This is the guidance.
But what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
same concept.
People put up
Yeah.
and then they shared it.
That's right. Because there are places in Wichita County RTK won't operate, and you've got to have it if you're doing what they're doing with it.
And actually, the forerunner was called community TV.
Yeah, and so people have gone in and done that. Well, how does that fit into this new plan? I mean, we're,
That's how it should work. Where there's a
I-
need, let private enterprise take care of the need.
what did
I mean,
Bill
we-
Preston used to say? If it's in the yellow pages,
I
government
mean,
doesn't need
again, I
to
go
do
back
it.
to my statement that we're trying to get internet service to people that don't have running water or electricity.
You're exactly right.
Well, and,
Or telephone.
yeah.
Or telephone.
That might be a nice first step.
Most of them have telephone.
Well, I'm just looking at the map that they showed.
I still know a guy that lives in Texas, in deep South Texas, that has to have a satellite telephone at the ranch because there's no phone service
yeah.
out there. I mean, that's just what you do. No.
When John Foley moved out to Ozona, and actually outside of Ozona,
That'd probably
we put a
qualify.
telephone pole up there, and I put an antenna on top of it so he could get AM radio.
Did he have to crawl to the top of the pole?
Yeah, like Green Acres.
Like Green Acres.
I know y'all didn't go to mental health classes, but that was in the judge's session.
They used us for examples.
I went to every
Judge.
class that was available.
Anything exciting you pick up on personnel policy?
Judge, I've got some notes in there, I do. I have a whole page of notes that I wanted to, because they gave us quite a few statutes to make sure that we incorporated those, and I wrote those down.
Would you share those in with Tracy and
Sure.
Tanya?
Sure.
It was good. It was, I thought, fairly well attended.
Yeah.
It seemed like we had the regular crowd.
Yeah, it was packed.
I think the classes were probably laid out better and more well-attended than
And I tell you
a lot of
what, one
classes.
thing I noticed, Judge, that I was griping about the delay having to travel to the convention, but because we traveled to the convention, I think they were more equipped to afford the refreshments.
Yeah.
So we had coffee and drinks.
Better
the
self-contained.
entire time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
better
they didn't just put it
self-contained.
out for an
They
hour.
never took it away from
Yeah.
us at
Yeah.
all. And that was really nice, because you told us what a pot of coffee cost.
Yeah, that's
At
a
a
big
motel.
decider, and they give you a free room, and then it's cheaper to serve whiskey than coffee.
Well, that convention center is really a nice
Really
facility
nice.
to do that. It's a shame that there's not hotels close, but there will be somewhere down the road. It'll build up out that way, but it's a good facility to go and have a meeting in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate the feedback. This is some, I was thinking about this. When I was commissioner, I used to come back to those conferences, I'd write up kind of a Cliff's Notes of the conference. And not everybody must have gone to the same conference I did. But it's, I almost look like maybe we ought to look at a thing of when our elected officials go to things.
Give a
they
report.
come back and they give a briefing to the court of what,
I think it's good.
That'd be good.
and they don't get their travel check until they do that.
Well, even if it's one of the clerks or somebody else, we're going to have to deal with those issues down the road that they're briefed on. I think it would be a good idea.
Well, I think it's a good exchange of information, and we'll get that, and it triggers those things we need to follow on to. And Commissioner Watts, you mentioned a while ago about we need to follow up on the subdivision things. Well, we were holding for the second step in that was to have a session with Bob Bass. And so we ought to look for that for a Friday to do that.
Scheduled for this coming Friday.
Is it? Oh, well, Nancy. All right.
He's on the ball.
So, do we want Don Bonifay in on that one again?
It might be great.
Okay, we'll make contact with
And
him.
didn't Allison Bass write the document we
Yes,
got?
yes.
Yeah, okay, so they're very much familiar with it.
He did send us things to be approved, documents and resolutions and everything to go on the March 7th agenda.
Okay,
I sent him an email back, I copied on all of you.
okay, let's go over those with him
Yeah.
and then put them on an
Because
agenda.
we've made probably some modifications to.
Yeah, I think we're ready to adopt. Is the resolutions first and then
Don't we need to do public hearings or anything on that before we?
Yeah.
There's a public.
Let's look at a layout plan before we do anything in court, because we really want to be sure we have the document like we want.
I'm trying not to sneeze.
Highlight
Man, I'm-
in the
trying.
judge gave us the core health. One of the biggest things that caught my attention,
Okay, that's not on
Okay.
discussion right now.
One other
We
thing,
did, I'll,
I'll give it
can
back.
we, are you all right to go? Yeah, give those.
Well,
Okay.
one of them that stood out was what we were calling the LEC. We called it a different name than what I know it as, and I didn't know if y'all had a reason for doing that.
That was the language in their contract. We all know the detention center versus the juvenile detention center.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was the differentiation.
and you had inmates versus detainees.
Okay.
Juveniles are detainees.
In those medical records, I'd highlighted some stuff. I just had some questions, and y'all may understand them well. I didn't about ultimately who puts those electronic files together. Who's
It's part of that med program that actually seems to be very generic to all of those.
the response time, like for the juvenile center, was 72 hours. Isn't that a little long?
Yeah.
Or is that,
So it kind of depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about the intake screenings or whatever, it's going to be pursuant to the policy that's been adopted by the juvenile board or pursuant to the
okay.
statute.
I need to go back and read that because I don't know specifically what that was.
throws you off because you got
Yeah.
the inmate is right here.
Yeah, my first thought was, gosh, I wished we could do that a
The
little.
differentiations are different, and also the detainees coming in are different than folks being arrested.
Right.
So there's kind of some difference in how that was dealt with, and that was all based on conversation, not just with LEC folks, but also with government.
I spent a good bit of time reading the liability and the limits of liability and all that part, and which historically is very important to us and where we.
One of the things, and I don't guess we had it within our ambulance agreement, but, you know, we're in charge of paying that ambulance fee, but, you know, in actuality, the ambulance works for us initially. So maybe next time we could work that in there or something. It may not happen very much.
Well, we no longer pay them anything. They now give us a commission or a royalty for franchise fee. But they pay it to the city, and the city redistributes to each of us with a nominal amount, but we're not paying anything any longer. And they do respond, and I don't believe we pay anything for that when they respond. So,
Judge,
yes.
I sent all the documents that Bob Bass sent for this subdivision that's going to be on for Friday. One of the documents is 131 pages, so if you guys could read that on your computers.
Yeah, I think I'd plug it in before you started. Yeah.
But Tracy, I wish you'd give a refresher course at one of our TAC meetings and the judge could set you up. But I was thinking about that while I was down there. We used to have a continual updated points of a contract, generic, but, you know, just like Barry mentioned in that part he looked at, pertinent things to watch for, venue and deals. It would be interesting because a lot of times, you know, when you have that power to know, it helps you understand a little bit better when you read. But that would be a good class, just the pertinence of.
Next year's state conference will be at McGargle, so we'll get you to speak.
Gargle Event Center. Nancy, is that 131 page, is that the one we've got?
No.
Oh, it's a different one. I thought, well, that's fine, I've still got mine, but,
Oh, well,
Okay.
it's the draft regulation that you sent over.
okay.
That was the regulation, what pays that.
One other thing that was mentioned, Judge, and is that our situation in Austin has not changed. And it's depending on something that would come along and change that. I guess it certainly could with a changing of the guard, that our ability to do work in Austin is not improved much. In other words, that old, we don't want you down here
It's still there.
is still there, and that's a challenge moving forward when things come up. Now, how hard they're going to press on that, or how hard they're going to try to see that doesn't happen, I don't know, but it just makes it all more important for you to have a working relationship with your state representative and your state senators, which I think we do, which is
Well,
good.
we do, when they're here.
When they're here, yeah.
They become foreigners when they cross
Yeah, I agree.
the Trinity River. Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do, and if you looked at on, the referendums in one of the primaries, they were gonna do away with, what was it? Oh, I just lost it. There was something there, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, that the, chairman of the House of Representatives of the state of Texas would not be able to appoint any Democrats as committee chairman.
Yeah.
That is an incredible step back in trying to have any kind of relationships in legislative actions. But I'm still, I hope I live long enough to see the 10-year plan to do away with property taxes. I am really curious to see what that.
I am very curious.
Yeah. Taxes. So, and I guess that was on the legislative discussion of what that new tax is going to be.
But everybody that has any real working idea, and one of those people, and I have a lot of confidence, Senator Perry. I think he's very much vested in the property tax deal, and he's not indicated that there's a plan that's functional, so I don't, you know.
All right, well, guys, thanks. Anything else on that?
No, I'll pull my notes, Judge, and get with you, Tracy, what I had to just for check. I just wrote down the highlights of all the statutes.
The prime rib cooked by the Aggie meat judging team was excellent as always.
Well, okay, that showed up on my calendar when I wasn't going, that didn't get taken off, so I am going through, and Morgan was gone, and I'm, what, and then all of a sudden it dawned on me what it was.
Although I must point out, Texas Tech has won the National Meat Judging Championship numerous years in a row, so.
And we've had their prime rib too.
We did their
It's
prime rib,
really good
and it's
too.
really good, and, but that's always interesting, that they always do a great job.
Big and good.
It was excellent.
Before we close out, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, despite the weather and everything else, there was an incredible effort, put on to get that court health contract done, by Tracy and Will and Lisa.
And you. And you.
But we worked on that on Zoom on Friday, and we had done a lot of preliminary work before that, because we didn't get that contract until the 11th, I think it was, of February. And, but there was a lot of effort to get it done. Kirk helped us some on the juvenile portion, but not near the commitment. But Tracy and I were here Saturday from 11 to 4, and then spent a while on, not a whole lot of time on Sunday. And, but that's a good, it's a much better contract. And I told her, I said, you need to send a bill to Robert Davis, because I bet you he'll take that contract to the next county. So, and anyway, but we came out with a much improved document. And, yeah, but that's all due to change at 1 minute after midnight today. So, I need to go in there, Nancy. I think the two that Todd signed are on your desk.
I got them
Yeah,
right here.
Okay.
David Duke is going to come back after lunch to sign, because I didn't catch him, and then Tracy and Lori.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd bother Lori today for it.
No, probably not a good
Can I
day.
sign for her? Deputy?
Oh, I think so. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we always say her, but I think you
Yeah.
just say David.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about, no, Mr. Davis?
He has to sign
Okay,
it too.
all right, we'll just need a signature page.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It is 11:53 and we're adjourned.